February 20, 1945. Iwo Jima. It was the second day of the battle. The beach behind him was still burning. The island in front of him was a maze of black volcanic ash, hidden tunnels, and Japanese soldiers who had spent 3 years turning every inch of ground into a trap. Private First Class Jack Lucas was moving through a twisting ravine with 3 other Marines, crawling toward an enemy airstrip. He was 17 years old. He had been 17 years old for exactly 6 days. His rifle had jammed. He was looking down, trying to clear it, when he saw the grenades. 2 of them. Black. Round. Already live. He was the only one who saw them. He had about 1 second to make a decision. He made it without hesitating. He yelled grenades, pushed the Marine next to him out of the way, slammed his rifle butt into one grenade and drove it into the volcanic ash, threw his body on top of it, and pulled the second one underneath him. 1 grenade exploded. More than 250 pieces of shrapnel tore through his body. His right lung was punctured. His thigh, neck, chin, and head were all hit. The blast threw him onto his back. The other grenade did not go off. The 3 Marines he had shielded looked back, saw what appeared to be a dead body, and kept moving. They had a battle to fight. There was no time to stop. They would find out later that Jack Lucas was not dead. He would spend the next 6 months in hospitals, undergo 26 surgeries, and be presented the Medal of Honor by President Harry Truman in a ceremony at the White House. He was 17. But to understand what happened in that ravine on February 20, 1945, you have to go back 3 years. Back to a 14-year-old boy in Plymouth, North Carolina, who decided that the United States Marine Corps needed him, even if the Marine Corps didn't know it yet. December 7, 1941. Pearl Harbor. Jack Lucas was 13 years old when the Japanese attacked. He heard the news on the radio, the same way most Americans did. Ships burning. Men dying. The country at war. Most 13-year-olds went back to school the next week. They collected scrap metal, bought war bonds with their allowances, followed the news on the radio. Jack Lucas was not most 13-year-olds. He was born in Plymouth, North Carolina, on February 14, 1928, Valentine's Day. He was always big for his age. 5 feet 8 inches tall, 180 pounds by the time he was 14. He looked older than he was. He acted older than he was. And from the day he heard about Pearl Harbor, he had one thought in his mind that would not go away. He needed to get into this war. He waited. He grew. He turned 14. And then, on August 8, 1942, when Jacqueline Harold Lucas was 14 years and 5 months old, he walked into a Marine Corps recruiting office in Norfolk, Virginia, and told them he was 17. He was 5 feet 8. He weighed 180 pounds. He looked the part. He forged his mother's signature on the consent form. He bribed a notary to make it official. He told them his name, gave them a false age, and enlisted in the United States Marine Corps Reserve. They believed him. Boot camp at Parris Island, South Carolina. Then training at Naval Air Station Jacksonville, Florida. Then assignment to the 21st Replacement Battalion at Marine Corps Air Station New River in North Carolina. Then Camp Lejeune. Qualified as a heavy machine gunner. At some point during all of this, the Marine Corps figured out that something was wrong. The records didn't add up. The boy was too young. He was sent to Hawaii and assigned to truck duty, driving supply vehicles on the base, far from any combat. That was not what Jack Lucas had signed up for. Hawaii, 1944. Jack Lucas was 16 years old, driving trucks on a military base while other Marines shipped out to fight the war he had lied his way into. He had been in the Marine Corps for 2 years. He had not fired a shot at the enemy. He was not going to be sent into combat. His commanding officers knew he was too young, and they intended to keep him away from the fighting until the war ended or he turned 18, whichever came first. Lucas was put in the brig at some point during this period. The exact details are slightly different depending on the account. Some say it was a fight, some say it was a combination of disciplinary infractions. What all accounts agree on is this: Jack Lucas was angry, frustrated, and absolutely determined to get into the war. In the brig, he made a decision. He later said, "I figured this procedure isn't working for me." On January 10, 1945, Jacqueline Harold Lucas walked out of his base wearing his khaki uniform, carrying his dungarees and field shoes rolled under his arm, and disappeared. He was declared unauthorized absence that night. He made his way to Pearl Harbor. He found a Higgins boat. He climbed aboard the USS Duel, a transport ship that Tokyo Rose had reported was bound for Iwo Jima, carrying the 1st Battalion, 26th Marines of the 5th Marine Division. As luck would have it, his cousin Samuel Oliver Lucas was aboard that ship. With his cousin's help, Jack Lucas hid in landing craft, slept on the weather deck, and survived on whatever food he could find for 29 days. He was one day away from being officially classified as a deserter, which carried far more serious consequences than unauthorized absence, when he turned himself in to Captain Robert Dunlap, the commanding officer of C Company. The captain took him to the battalion commander, Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Pollock. Pollock looked at the boy standing in front of him. He had read the situation. He knew what Lucas had done. And then he said something. February 19, 1945. Iwo Jima. D-Day. What hit the Marines when they came ashore was unlike anything most of them had ever imagined. The island was 8 square miles of black volcanic ash, sulfurous rock, and hidden fortifications. The Japanese had spent 3 years building it into a fortress. There were 11 miles of tunnels underground. There were 21,000 Japanese soldiers dug into the cliffs, the caves, and the earth itself. For the first 30 minutes after the landing, the beach was quiet. Unnervingly quiet. Then the Japanese opened fire. Machine guns, mortars, artillery, all of it coordinated, all of it aimed at the packed beach where thousands of Marines had just landed. Men who had made it ashore safely in the first minutes found themselves caught in the open, with no cover and fire coming from positions they couldn't see. Jack Lucas came ashore with C Company in the afternoon wave. He landed on Red Beach 1. Shells were flying, people were being blown apart, and bullets were everywhere, he later said. They made a hash of us. I was as anxious as ever to kill as many Japs as I could kill. It was just where I wanted to be. That was Jack Lucas. 17 years old. On the most heavily fortified island in the Pacific. Saying it was exactly where he wanted to be. That night, he and his 4-man fire team dug into a large shell crater about 500 yards from the airstrip. They listened to the sounds of the battle around them and waited for morning. The next day would change everything. February 20, 1945. D-Day +1. In the early morning, Lucas and his fire team began crawling through a ravine toward the Japanese airstrip. The island was a maze. Ravines, trenches, craters, all of it covered in black volcanic ash that absorbed sound and hid movement. The Japanese had been fighting from these positions for days, and they knew every inch of the ground. Lucas's team spotted a Japanese pillbox and took cover. Then they spotted something else. In a parallel trench, just feet away, 11 Japanese soldiers. The Marines opened fire immediately. No time to aim properly, they fired offhand, from the hip. Lucas later said he managed to hit 2 of the Japanese soldiers before his rifle jammed. He looked down to clear the jam. That was when he saw the grenades. 2 of them. Already thrown. Already in the trench with him and his 3 companions. He was the only one who saw them. What happened in the next second has been described by Jack Lucas himself in words that are almost impossible to absorb. I hollered grenades and I dove for them. I smashed my rifle butt against one and drove it into the volcanic ash, and fell on it, and pulled the other one under me. I was there to fight, and we were there to win. What you have to do you do to win. It was not in me to turn to run. One grenade exploded. That volcanic ash and the good Lord saved me, Lucas said later. If I'd been on hard ground that thing would have split me in two. There was just one explosion. One was all I could handle, and I had trouble handling that one. It blew me over on my back, and it punctured my right lung, but it never knocked me out. The blast threw him onto his back. In his left hand, still clutched, was the second grenade, the one that had not exploded. More than 250 pieces of shrapnel were now embedded in his body. His right lung was punctured. His thigh, his neck, his chin, his head, all hit. The 3 Marines he had saved looked back, saw the blood, saw the body, assumed. Jack Lucas lay in the trench. He could not speak. He could not move well. He was bleeding from wounds across most of his body. But he was not dead. A Navy corpsman happened to pass through the area, checking the trenches for wounded. He found Lucas. He began treating the wounds as best he could under fire. The battle was still raging around them. While the corpsman worked, a Japanese soldier moved toward their position preparing to throw another grenade. The corpsman drew his weapon and killed him. Then he got the attention of nearby Marines, who radioed for stretcher bearers. They carried Lucas back to the beach. He waited at the aid station until nightfall, when he was evacuated to a ship offshore. He was moved to the hospital ship USS Samaritan. Then to hospitals in Hawaii. Then San Diego. Then San Francisco. From March 28 to September 18, 1945, 6 months, Jack Lucas underwent surgery after surgery to remove the shrapnel from his body. 26 operations in total. Hundreds of metal fragments removed from his torso, arm, face, and legs. While he was in a Navy hospital in Charleston, South Carolina, the Marine Corps did something that says everything about how they viewed what he had done. They removed the unauthorized absence charge from his record. They reinstated his rank of private first class. They formally discharged him due to disability. And then they recommended him for the highest military decoration in the United States. October 5, 1945. The South Lawn of the White House. President Harry Truman stood before Jack Lucas and placed the Medal of Honor around his neck. Lucas was 17 years old. He was the youngest Marine ever to receive the Medal of Honor. He was the youngest serviceman of any branch, in any conflict since the Civil War, to receive it. Also in attendance, Admiral Chester Nimitz, who had commanded the entire Pacific Fleet. Secretary of Defense James Forrestal. Lucas's mother, who had no idea any of this was happening when her son forged her signature on an enlistment form 3 years earlier. President Truman later said something about the Medal of Honor that he is remembered for to this day. "I would rather have this medal than be President of the United States." Jack Lucas reportedly responded, "Sir, I'll swap with you." That was Jack Lucas. After the ceremony, there were parades. One in Washington. Another 3 days later in New York City. Lucas stood in an open car and waved to the crowds. Women ran out from behind barricades to give him kisses. He was 17 years old. He later said, "I had a hell of a time." After the war, Jack Lucas kept a promise he had made to his mother. He finished high school. He enrolled at High Point College in North Carolina and earned a business degree through the GI Bill in 1956. But the war was not entirely behind him. In 1961, 16 years after Iwo Jima, Jack Lucas did something that surprises almost everyone who hears it. He joined the United States Army. Not as an officer. Not in an administrative role. As a paratrooper with the 82nd Airborne Division. He had developed a fear of heights. He intended to conquer it the only way he knew how, by jumping out of aircraft. During a training jump at Fort Bragg, both of his parachutes failed. Jack Lucas fell 3,500 feet. He survived. He sustained only minor injuries. His team leader said, "Jack was the last one out of the plane and the first one on the ground." That was still Jack Lucas. He served until 1965, reaching the rank of captain. He volunteered for Vietnam. The Army would not let him go. He spent his last years of service training younger soldiers at Fort Bragg, soldiers who would fight the next war. The life that followed was not a simple one. He married 3 times. None successfully. One of his wives reportedly hired an undercover state trooper to kill him. He was a restless man in a peaceful world, the kind of man the military makes perfectly and civilian life never quite knows what to do with. But he never stopped being Jack Lucas. In 1997, when the keel of the USS Iwo Jima was being laid, Jack Lucas placed his Medal of Honor citation inside the hull of the ship. It is still there, sealed inside, sailing with the fleet. He traveled the world speaking to troops and veterans. He shook hands with presidents. He told his story to anyone who would listen, always in the same direct, unadorned way, the way a man talks when he has nothing to prove and nothing to hide. On June 5, 2008, Jacqueline Harold Lucas died of leukemia at a hospital in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He was 80 years old. His obituary described him as a World War II Marine veteran. It mentioned the Medal of Honor. It mentioned Iwo Jima. On September 18, 2016, the United States Navy announced that a new Arleigh Burke-class destroyer would be named the USS Jack Lucas. The ship was commissioned on October 7, 2023. It is active today. The name of a 17-year-old Marine who threw his body on 2 grenades is now written on the side of one of the most powerful warships in the world. There is a question that people always ask about Jack Lucas. Why did he do it? He had a second, maybe less than a second, to decide. He was 17 years old. He had been in combat for 1 day. His rifle was jammed. He could not fire back. He had no tactical advantage, no strategic calculation, no time to think. He saw 2 grenades that were about to kill 3 men. And he put his body between those grenades and those men. When people asked him why, he always gave the same answer. What you have to do you do to win. It was not in me to turn to run. That's it. No philosophy. No heroic speech. No complicated explanation. He saw what needed to be done, and he did it. There is one more detail about that day that is worth remembering. The second grenade, the one he pulled under his body, the one he held in his hand while the first one exploded, did not go off. If it had, Jack Lucas would not have survived. The surgeon who treated him aboard the USS Samaritan reportedly said something that has stayed with every account of this story ever since. He was too damn young and too damn tough to die. That was Jack Lucas. He lied his way into the Marine Corps at 14. He stowed away on a warship at 16. He threw his body on 2 grenades at 17. He survived 2 failed parachutes at 33. He lived to 80. And his name is still out there on the ocean, on the side of a destroyer, sailing forward. The United States Marine Corps has produced many heroes. Jack Lucas was one of the youngest. One of the most improbable. And one of the most completely, irreducibly American.